Several years ago, when I was 25 at the time, I lived with one of my best friends. Our friendship eventually started to dwindle, so she was rarely home. This night, however, she ended up staying at our place, heading to bed early. I was a server at the time, so I stayed up pretty late, usually watching YouTube and just smoking pot. This night was no different than any other, except for the fact my neighbors tried to kidnap me. I'll go ahead and give you some background info on my house and my neighbors. We lived in a 3-bedroom house with 2 bedrooms and the kitchen facing the crazy neighbors. They were a younger couple living in a smaller mill house. They were consistently coming over to our door asking for handouts. Now, normally I'd be happy to help a neighbor out, but they would come over and ask for crazy stuff like for us to fill up an old Mountain Dew bottle with water because theirs got shut off. They asked for beer and once literally asked for $1. They would consistently be knocking at our door to ask for help, and when we wouldn't answer, I'd peek through the window to see them either jacking cigarette butts from the ashtray or pressing their eyeballs against the door peephole to see if they could spot us. Anyway, there I was smoking some weed and watching YouTube on my couch when I heard a knock at the door. I rolled my eyes because I knew exactly who was knocking. It was about 11 p.m. I checked the peephole and sure enough, the boyfriend who was on the porch. Normally I'd just walk away and continue with my life, but he looked like he was in distress. So I opened the door to see what was up.
Hey, I just wanted to come over here and see if you would film my engagement. I got my girlfriend a ring here in my pocket, and I need you to follow me. I need you to follow me to my backyard and film it for me.
Baffled and curious, I told him congrats and I said I'd be out in a second. I just needed to put some shoes on. I shut the door behind me and locked it. Quickly, I ran into the back of my room and looked out into their backyard. I peeked through the blinds to see the setup. Nothing. Pitch black darkness. No sign of decorations or anything like that. Naturally, I woke up my roommate and I told her what was going on. "Oh, yeah, screw that," she said to me, and we both walked back up to the door after the boyfriend started banging on the door. I looked through the peephole again. I couldn't see anything and I was confused all the way up until he pulled his eyeball away from the peephole. I quickly turned around and put my back up against the door. My roommate came running back to the door with her room manning 2 wires for protection. We both clung onto the hangers and sat up against the door until he finally left. We were so freaked out, but we wanted to make sure we weren't overreacting. We went out to our back door and hopped into her car so we could do a drive-by. Slowly, we crept by in her car and peered into their living room. Sitting on the couch and staring at the wall, they looked strung out, was the couple and an older man. We sped off and ended up staying at a friend's house that night. I never answered the door for either of them ever again. One day I came home from work and an older lady was parked out in their driveway. She walked up to me as I got out of my car and asked if I knew who the neighbors were. I told her I hadn't seen them for a while and she informed me that she was the owner. She told me they were months late on rent and came to evict them. She entered the home to find it completely trashed. Needles and garbage everywhere, holes in the walls, and literal poop on the floor. I told her I was sorry to hear that and that she had to deal with all of it. But I was just happy they were finally gone. I'm not 100% sure what was going on that night, but I'm glad I didn't follow him into the backyard. Let's go back about 3 years ago when I had just moved onto a new state for college and didn't really know anyone. Unfortunately, I, at the time, was using one of those swipe left, swipe right dating apps, and I had just moved into the city and had to end a relationship due to the move. I was mostly trying to distract myself and got a sense of what people were like down here. I began talking to a guy, let's call him Steven. We were going to the same school that I was studied. We were going to the same school that I was. I began talking to this guy, let's call him Steven. He was going to the same school that I was, and he studied in the same department coincidentally. I guess I let my guard down because I assumed he was very dry since we were both kind of nerds with chemistry and physics. Because of that, the extent of what he was able to get was my Snapchat. It never really blossomed more than a couple of snaps every few days. Cut to a little over a month later, I had just gotten out of class and I got a snap from Steven asking if I was busy. I said no, I'm leaving campus and I was going to go head home to finish whatever I needed to do. He asks if I may do him a huge favor because he had to run out of town for work and had to drive about 4 hours south. On Snapchat, I was actually able to see his location and he really was heading into that direction. So, there was nothing wrong yet. Let me just say that from this point on, I tend to have someone send me their username because at the point I'd be able to tell rather quickly if it was a brand new account or not, which would usually throw out some red flags if the account was brand new. But I didn't do that this time. He wanted me to go over to his place and feed his dog and let him out because he wouldn't be home much later, if not until the next day. I had never been to his place and I vaguely knew that he had a dog. I hesitated and Steven must have followed up with something convincing because I ended up saying, okay, but only because there's a dog. He sends me the address and even though I have already been living there for a month, I really didn't venture out of the campus, bars, and even the area right around my apartment. The address is downtown and I had only been to the bars downtown where the surrounding apartments were very nice. So yeah, around his area it was really nice and I didn't think anything of it. I had just so happened to have been talking to a guy and they were in the area that day. I told Steven that I would be there in a few hours for the dog. The guy that I had also been talking to, we'll call him Brad, met up with me and we hung out for a little bit and I told him I had to go run and do a favor, but he can come if he wants, and he did decide to come. I got to the house and it is in a horrible area of town. The car was relatively new and I was actually scared to leave it parked. I get up to the house and there is a dog chained up to the front banister, barking and snapping at us. I tried to call Steven and ask him what was going on with the house and is this the dog I'm caring for or is there another dog? He said that currently he was in a meeting so he couldn't talk, but he said no, the dog is inside and he's in a crate in one of the bedrooms. Just walk to the left from the guard dog and go inside. We walk in and it is an absolute mess. Like a trap house, really. There's a mattress on the floor, stained, dirty clothes on piles everywhere, but less like a hoarder and more like he was homeless. There were cockroaches in the kitchen. The house seemed to be falling apart in one of the rooms. The furniture was mostly ripped up, completely stained, and just disgusting. Brad was kind of a neat freak, so I could feel his desire to get out of the house. So I quickly texted Steven saying we found the dog and we will let him out, but where are the bowls so I can give him food and water? He says just go into the kitchen and they're next to the sink. I should have noticed that no one really lived in this house because it was uninhabitable unless you were squatting and homeless. There weren't any dog bowls anywhere, so I just ended up grabbing regular dishes and I filled one with water. Now, because I didn't really think too much of what happened, so my memory is spotty. I don't remember what triggered Steven to have to contact somebody else to come help me with something in the house. Either way, how I could unlock the back door to let the dog out or find dry food to give him. Either way, I asked him a question and he responded by saying, "Oh, hold on, let me get my friend that lives across the street to come and help you." Now, Brad and I looked at each other and wondered why he would have someone across the street he already knows. if there's someone across the street, why am I even here? When he mentions that he's right nearby, we walk up to the front of the house and see him leaving a front yard down the street. This guy is about 6 foot tall with blood dreads down to his shoulders. This guy is about 6 foot with blonde dreads down to his shoulders. For whatever reason, he ended up standing at the threshold of the front door and answered my question from there. I was starting to get agitated because I felt like I was wasting my time coming here. So I really didn't give a crap about what this guy did or how unhelpful he decided to be. This guy seems to be annoyed, but it was a pretty hot day and it looked like he had been working outside. But apparently he had been staring Brad down hard. I texted Steven that we just left and the dog is in the back of the crate. As we left the house, I kept looking in my rearview mirror and I saw the big blonde guy walking in a different direction from where he came from originally. On the way back home, Brad and I were mostly talking about how horrible the house was for the dog to live in. I didn't really tell the truth about how well I knew the guy to Brad, so he assumed that we had been friends for some time and that I could have trusted him. I didn't really know how to explain that I had casually spoke to him, but nothing more, and that he hit a soft spot when he mentioned the dog and needed help. I am quite literally the person who gets lured into a van with a sign that says free puppy on it. When I got home that day, I deleted him off of Snapchat and that was that. A couple of weeks later, I came clean to Brad and about how weird the situation really was. Thinking back on it, I had my set of keys in my hand and he had a pocket knife. Plus, he was very well versed in a couple of areas in MMA. But honestly, we were just considering how the guy had shown up from across the street. Could he have had a gun? Then it dawned on us that if he had actually decided to stay where he was and I went alone, I probably wouldn't have came home. Before this happened, I had been living in New Orleans for almost 10 years, lived in okay areas, quote, scary parts of town, and even one of the seediest motels that is frightfully operational to this day. That place begs for a novel of its own. But this story isn't about being a girl in a sketchy area of a very violent and depressing city. It's about how one night my coworker and myself did what we always did after working the same shift at our club on Bourbon Street. We split a cab from the line that waits outside one of the hotels on Canal Street after having breakfast at IHOP. One of the places that you would probably end up if you ever spent a drunken night in the quarter, whether you remember it or not. Dancers and cabbies in NOLA have a very good relationship. They watch out for us, let us tell them our weird stories at night, and we tip them very well since most of us know each other, and they just shoo us home for the cheaps with the meter off. This time, my friend, I'll call her Jenna, and I ended up in a car with a female driver. It's uncommon, but it happens. We tell her where we're going, and first we're gonna drop off Jenna. To which the driver replies angrily to put the address in her phone. We reiterate the directions, and since she's being so aggressive, Jenny just does it. The phone confirms what we said, and she starts driving. The taxer in NOLA do not do this, by the way. So that's red flag number 1. Red flag 2 when she starts driving in the opposite direction, ignoring us saying and yelling at her that she's going the wrong way. It's when we look at her cabbie license on the seat and see that it not only is this woman not the man pictured, but she's taking us to the interstate to go God knows where. We realize that something terrifying is happening and we start screaming to let us out as we reach for the handles while stopped at a stoplight. Suddenly they go click. Maybe they were unlocked or already locked before this, but she clicked it. It was not responding until we said we were calling the cops, and Jenna was fake giving our location with the cab details to the police. The woman swerved into the Chevron lot right before the overpass, and then she let us out. Our frazzled selves threw a 10 into the car. We were scared and didn't want to antagonize this person any further before they sped off. Then we went to sit at a bus stop before Jenna called a cab directly, and I just got on the damn bus in a frenzy, spewing my story to the driver while shaking. Human trafficking is a huge and real problem in NOLA for tourists and residents, adults and children. There are news stories you can find easily and even more you've never heard about publicly. We don't know where this woman was taking us, to who, or what her intentions were, but they didn't seem good. Dolled up with a club makeup makes us look younger than our 30s paired up with casual sweats most of us throw on at the end of the night. Jenna's a blonde, me a pregnant brunette. That's a good haul for a night's work. The thing that scares me the most is that we were talking about the pregnancy when we first got in the cab. And that actually might be the reason. As people who are very familiar with the area, the people, and the general working of this city, it was clear that we were in huge trouble. To top it off, we both knew we were victims of cruel acts that ended up in them not being around us anymore. These things happen, but in a cab after 12 hours of being in heels, we were on alert. We just wanted to go home. To the lady driving someone else's cab in NOLA, please, let's never meet again.